Hi guys, this is Oscar from Oscar's Tech. You can also find me at Not a Grouch on Twitter. And I wanted to quickly give you a walkthrough the preference settings on your Chrome browser for OS X. So I'll give you a quick overview of Chrome and the preferences settings that you have. So this is Chrome right here, a blank tab. These are the applications I have installed already. We can cover that at another time, but we're going to look at our settings for the browser. And those are over here. If you click on the small wrench in the corner, if you click on the wrench and then scroll down to where it says Preferences, then this changes to your preferences. Or you can just go to this address to update your preferences. After you get to the Preferences page, then you can go through all the basics, personal stuff, more advanced settings called Under the Hood, and extensions. So let's go through the basics real quick. On startup means, what do you want the browser to do when you start it up? I tell it to open the following pages, and I have 3 pages here. You could also have an option where you open up a home page, whatever you set as your home page. You can reopen the pages that were open last time you closed the browser, or you can select your own pages, and you can have multiple pages start up automatically, not just one. The home page, if you choose this option over here where it says open the home page, or just when you open up a new tab like this, that's the home page. It is currently set to use a new tab page. So that way when I open up a new tab, it's blank, there's nothing there, I don't have to wait for anything to load. You could also choose a different page to have as your starting page. The toolbar has 2 simple options, show home button. The toolbar section has 2 buttons. One is show home button, and the other one says always show the bookmarks bar. And the bookmarks bar is this right here, where you can drag and drop bookmarks, or add JavaScript applets, or stuff like that. And the home button is this little button over here. Some people use it, some people don't use it, so you have an option to turn that off. The search with Chrome happens directly on the browser bar, so you don't have 2 separate searches like you've had in other browsers in the past. You can do your search right here. If you just go to if you do a search, it automatically searches Google and shows you the results right here. You can choose other search engines like Yahoo or Bing, or you can even install other ones. And you have an option to use the instant search or not. And then the default browser option makes Chrome be the default browser if you want, or to not bother you with that question whenever you start up a browser. So again, these are the basics preferences under Chrome for Google, the Google Chrome browser. And this is under Mac OS X. Let's look a little bit at the personal account, at the personal stuff. You can actually synchronize your bookmarks and other data across different browsers. For example, from your phone to your desktop browser, or to another computer if you have a laptop and a desktop or a netbook or something like that. You could synchronize your settings with your email account, and this is where that happens. So you will click on Customize, select what options you want to synchronize, and choose to encrypt password and the data. I would say encrypt all synced data is the best, and then use your own Google account password to set it. The next option is passwords, and that means do you want Chrome to save your passwords? I have mine set to never save passwords because I use LastPass as my password manager, which is that little button up here. Autofill I also don't use, so I don't need my forms to be filled automatically whenever I go to a page. If you wanted to, you could have information here filled out, like your addresses, credit card numbers, and other information from your address book, so that when you go to fill out a form, if you want to buy something, for example, Chrome would fill it out for you. But I use, again, LastPass, this little extension over here for that, so I don't need that. And browsing data, that's if you're going to move from another browser into Chrome for the first time, you can actually import that information so you have it already. Let's go down to Under the Hood. Under the Hood has a lot more advanced settings, and this has a lot to do with cookies and downloads and stuff like that. So this is under privacy where you can actually keep your settings for your history, um, whether you want to use Google Chrome to tell you that there's a problem with the website rather than you having to discover that a website's down or broken. You can also have the browser guess what you're trying to type, so it saves you some time. I don't use that option, that's why I have it unchecked. Predict network actions to improve page load performance. What that means is that Google Chrome is going to try to load certain files in advance so that you can save some time when you're browsing through websites. So it might load the next page a little bit in advance. So that's what this does. You don't have a lot of visibility into what the settings are, but it's supposed to help you with performance. Phishing and malware protection is good because Chrome will alert you if you've visited a website that is sketchy or has some sort of malware in it, if it's been discovered and added to the database. You can also choose to send information to Google so they can improve on Chrome. I don't do that automatically. And if you wanted to clear your cookies or cache, this is where you would come to do it. Preferences, under the hood, clear browsing data. And when you click on that, you have an option of clearing the browsing history, download history, the cache, cookies, save password, and all the autofill. And you could clear it for different time periods. The past hour, the past day, past week, 4 weeks, or since you started using Chrome. Under content settings, you have a lot of information for each of the sections that manage your content. So for example, cookies, you can turn them off or on or choose different options. You can also choose to show images. This is a very old setting that comes from browsers, and most people ask me, why do you need that? And you don't really need that unless you have a slow connection. For example, let's say that you're using an old dial-up connection or tethering over your phone's maybe slow data connection. Then you might not want to waste time loading images that you don't want to see, and you could come in and turn that off. JavaScript, the next one down, is a type of programming language that makes websites do cool stuff. It's largely or fast replacing Flash websites. So when you have animations and slideshows and cool things that move around the website, it can be done with JavaScript, so you need to allow for JavaScript to run, and this is where you set that option. By default, JavaScript is allowed to run on your browser, so normally if you want to turn it off, this is where you come to do that. Handlers are, when you click on certain links, there's a process called a handler that's going to decide what type of link it is, and therefore decides what the application will do once you click on that link. So if, for example, you click on a PDF, excuse me, a PDF file, the handler will in that case open up a PDF reader. And if you click on an MP3 file, for example, the handler will open an MP3 player, and so on. And so you can control that, for example, by adding a different type of activity here. Right here we see that webcal files are going to open Google Calendar, and you can change that option to something else. What seems to be a problem, and Firefox has this as well, is that you can't add new ones here. They need to come up first under your browsing experience before they come up and show here. The next section for plugins. These are not plugins that you would normally add. These are, for example, plugins like Firefox, not Firefox, but like Adobe or Java plugins, QuickTime, Flash. These are not your normal add-ons that you would use to add more functionality to your browser, but they are plugins that are required for some things to work. And they're usually handled by Chrome, but you can actually come in here and change the settings for each one, turn them on or off. Again, preferences, under the hood, and we're looking at the content settings. We're down to plugins. Pop-ups, this is where you decide if you want pop-ups to be allowed or which sites you allow them to. So for example, here I have a list of them. That means that these websites are allowed to show me pop-ups because they've come up in the past and I put them under the exceptions. You could say allow all sites to show pop-ups, or do not allow any site to show pop-ups, and then you can manage individual exceptions after that. The location section tells applications and the browser where you are physically located. And if a website asks for that, these are the options that you have for your browser to provide that information. Normally, you don't want people to be able to track your physical location, but in some situations, you might want it. For example, when you post a message on Twitter, you can choose to show your location. And if Twitter asks for that, this is how you would handle whether you allow them to see your location or not. So you can set it to allow the physical location to always be tracked whenever the site requests it, or you can make it so that the website has to get your permission before it does that. Or you can just say, no, I don't want any site to track my physical location. And if you choose that option, you can then later manage exceptions site by site. So, and the very last setting under the contents is the notification, and this is when a website, HTML5 or the newer websites are trying to give you notifications about events. For example, your email, maybe you receive a new email, or instant messenger application has new messages for you, like Facebook. This is where you would let that application show you a desktop notification. If the website is capable of doing that, these are your settings for that. Alright, so that is overview for privacy, content settings, and how you clear your browsing data. Let's move down to web content. These are the defaults of your preferences for how you view the web. So if the website doesn't provide this type of information, these are the default settings that you'll see. The font size will be medium. The fonts will be standard. I haven't changed them. Page zoom is always at 100%. And different options here. For example, when you press tab and you're moving down a form, it moves rather than having to click on it on that selection. Network, this is where you would go in to change your proxy settings if you want to connect to a different type of network with maybe your internet provider gives you a proxy username and password that you need or something like that. This is where you change it. If you visit a website that's on a language different than yours, Chrome can detect that and ask you to translate that if you want. So this is where you do that. I normally have it set to offer me to translate the pages, so then I can read something that I might be interested, even if it's not in English or Spanish. The download preferences settings lets you pick a folder to always download files to whenever you get new files. Normally this is on the desktop for most browsers, but I have it set to go to my downloads so that I can always find my downloads when I go there. You can also have it ask you every time you download a file, so you pick a location with each time. HTTPS/SSL is how security certificates are handled. For the most part, this is an advanced setting that you do not want to change much, but you want to make sure that this option is checked, and it says the option that says checked for server certificate revocation. That means that if you go to a website that has an old expired certificate, you will be notified of that, so that you are aware of the site that you're browsing to make sure that it's secure or it is in fact the site that you want to be looking at. And the last option here is Google Cloud Print, which is part of a service offered by Google that lets you print anywhere on the internet to your home printer. So if you have that available, this is where you turn that on. And under the preferences, the last option we have are extensions, and we can cover that very briefly because this will vary from browser to browser depending on the user, because everybody has extensions that they need, and it is never the same for everybody. So the extensions menu shows you all the extensions that have been installed on your browser, and extensions is another word for app. So if you remember the beginning of the video where I show you this screen, these are apps. So we have Udemy, Global Tweets, My Local Crime, CodeTweet, There's a game named Dead Frontier, Prezi, of course, for presentation, and a bunch of other ones. These are apps, but they're also extensions. So if you need to manage these, you can do it a couple different ways. If you go to extensions, you can find the app right here, and you can click on enable. Uncheck that so it's no longer enabled, and that way the application no longer is available for the time until you re-enable it. That way, if you have a lot of extensions, for example, and you feel like they're taking a long time to load, you can enable and disable them on the fly. If you don't want an extension anymore at all, you can just click on remove, and that will take it off your browser. You can also drag and drop, for example, let's say I no longer want to use, let's say, Dead Frontier. I can grab that and actually drag and drop it all the way to the bottom right here, which says remove from Chrome, and that is gone. If we go back to extensions, it's also not listed here anymore. So anyway, that's what the extensions menu does. Under preferences, you can also do development work if you have an extension that you're working on, or an extension that hasn't been published. You could load it from files just by clicking on that button right here that says load unpack extension. That means that it's not an official extension. Maybe your friend made it, maybe you downloaded it from a strange website. Be careful with that, of course, because unless you know what you're doing, you could be installing malicious software. And of course, if you do this, pack extension, that's when you're working on an extension and you want to pack it up for other people to use. Most people won't ever need to do that. And you can also update all the extensions from here. But as far as I understand, extensions get updated automatically as new versions are released. So you don't need to do this unless you have to get the very latest one this very second. You can just wait for that to happen automatically. So if we click on that, you see that nothing happened because all my extensions are up to date. So that does it for Google Chrome overview. I hope that was helpful. There's a lot of information, so feel free to go back and rewind and pause or whatever. And let me know if there's any questions you have at NotAGrouch on Twitter, oscarstech.com on the web, and you can always email me or call me directly. Anyway, hope you have a good day.